RAF Nocton Hall Hospital. That is the destination for today's video. Now, this is an abandoned military-owned at one point hospital. It is built on the site of Nocton Hall, which was, I believe, was built in about the 1500s. Henry VIII himself is said to have gone there, but I'll tell you more about that later. Now, I thought it would be lovely to visit here because I think it links in nicely to those haunted abandoned airfields of Lincolnshire that we've visited over the last few months. It is abandoned. It is derelict, however, it is owned by a private company and they do private tours, which is what we are here for today. So we've had to actually fill in some disclaimer forms. I imagine it's going to be quite dangerous. We've got to wear a hard hat. I'm just waiting for the lady who's going to be conducting the tour, I believe, and then we're going to have a chance to look round. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to talk on camera while we're on the tour in case there might be other people there as well, a bit of data protection issue. However, I will try and video as much as I possibly can to show you, and I'll learn as much as I possibly can from this lady that's conducting the tour, and I'm going to share it with you in this video. So stay tuned.
Beneath the tangled vines and the silence of the Lincolnshire countryside, a hollow giant still stands. RAF Nocton Hall Hospital, spared by a shroud of English fog when Hitler's bombers passed overhead. These walls have seen soldiers, boys of just 18, cry for their mothers, and now they're crumbling in silence. Once a hive of activity, it was home to many during the war, including hundreds of Americans who left their mark on these grounds. For decades, it's been a site of fascination for both history lovers and paranormal seekers, with terrifying ghost tales of jolting reminders of a turbulent past. Whispers in the corridors, shadows drifting past shattered windows. Was it just the wind or something that never left? Today the gates are unlocked and you are invited to come with me.
Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire and this is the Wanderlust Way. Firstly, let me say a huge thank you to everybody that supports this channel. You're liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, becoming members, sending super thanks, sending donations. Honestly, everything that you're doing is helping the channel to grow, and it allows me to continue with these adventures and share the stories that I find with you. So today is something very, very special indeed, because we are going back in time once again in Lincolnshire. This time we are at RAF Nocton. Now there's the hall, but there's also the hospital that was built mainly for the military, and it played a part in World War II and a big part in American history as well. So there's some really, really interesting things to find and discover here. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, it is private property, so not anybody can just rock up here. However, they do a private tour with a wonderful lady named Mary who has an extensive knowledge about this place. She's got a military background as well, so she's the best person for the job in my opinion. Now, I'm going to try and remember as much as I possibly can to share with you on this tour, and hopefully it'll feel like you've come along with me. However, if you do want to book your own private tour, then she is still doing them. That is still an option if you're in the Lincolnshire area, but I do not know for how much longer, because we just don't know how long sites like this can keep up. Well, you're probably ready to dive into it now, so pull up a chair. That's enough waffle, let's wander.
The story of Nocton Hall begins in the 1500s, when the first grand house rose proudly on these Lincolnshire grounds. For centuries it stood as a symbol of status and influence, until disaster came in the most unlikely form. A bird's nest lodged high in a chimney caught fire. The blaze tore through the building, leaving it gutted. From the ashes it rose again, most notably in 1841, when Frederick John Robinson, later the Earl of Ripon, rebuilt it in a striking Tudor revival style. This was a house meant to impress. The gardens were planted with exotic trees to show off the family's wealth, including towering redwoods that still stretch to the sky today. And then there's the rumour. They say that during King Henry VIII's northern progress, he and Catherine Howard visited Nocton Hall, and that Catherine herself planted a horse chestnut tree in the grounds. Mary, our guide, smiles when she tells it. The lifespan of a horse chestnut wouldn't reach that far back, but perhaps the tree standing here today is the descendant of Catherine's. Still, it's the kind of story that adds a little magic to this place. In quieter times, the estate played a rather different role, supplying potatoes to the nearby Smith's crisp factory, a curious little footnote in its long history. Do we have any Smiths fans watching? If so, let me know your favourites in the comments. Personally, I'll take a chipstick every time. When the First World War broke out, the owners left, and Nocton Hall was handed over to the military. It became a convalescent home for American soldiers, a quiet refuge for the men recovering from the horrors of the front. By the Second World War, the RAF had taken charge. Lincolnshire was thick with air bases, and Nocton was perfectly placed to care for the injured. The hall itself became home to officers and nurses, while in the grounds around, a vast hospital complex began to take shape. Dozens of buildings appeared, wards, theatres, recreation spaces, each one part of a small city devoted to medicine and recovery. It was built for the military, yes, but in later years some NHS patients were treated here too. Locals often preferred it to Lincoln Hospital, especially for maternity care. Many babies took their first breaths in the labour ward here at Nocton, and Mary has welcomed some of them back on her tours, grown adults now eager to walk the place where their story began. Over the years, Mary has collected so many personal accounts, small vivid memories that bring this place to life. One came from an American nurse who stayed in the hall itself. She remembered the feeling of stepping through the grand front doors, seeing the staircase sweep upwards, and from the top window looking out across the gardens to the rows of Nissen huts. It's details like that which remind you this wasn't just a hospital, it was a bustling, vital hub of wartime life.
So the fence line goes all the way around. And remember that stream I mentioned? See this blue line? That's a stream.
Yep.
So that is the original wartime hospital.
Ah, okay.
And all the Nissen huts were here.
Right.
That's the woodland that we've just passed.
Mary, who now lives on site with her family, has an unshakable bond with this place. Like so many in Lincolnshire, her life is threaded with connections to the military, her own family included. Her father once worked here, and over the years she's built a vast collection of stories from those who served, recovered or lived within these walls. It's clear this site matters to her in a way that goes beyond history books. She shares her own memories as we walk, sometimes a personal anecdote, like the room where her husband had his tonsils removed as a child, but always with a sense of pride and protection. And later I will show you the incredible home she's creating here on the grounds, the old water tower she and her family are lovingly restoring. The hospital's working life ended in 1995 when the Americans handed it back after decades of service. For a time the hall itself became a care home, but that too closed. Developers eventually bought the hall, hoping to turn it into luxury apartments, but planning permission was refused, and then came the fires. In 2004, a blaze gutted Nocton Hall. Rumours swirled that the owners might have been responsible, but Mary tells us the truth. The hall was never insured. There was nothing to gain from its destruction. With the site empty, the opportunists moved in. Thieves stripped the roof and took anything of value, leaving asbestos open to the wind and rain. Vandals smashed windows, tore down fittings and defaced the place. This isn't gentle decay over time, it is destruction by human hands, and it's left so much of the site dangerously unstable. We are lucky to be here at all. If it weren't for Mary persuading the owners to allow official tours, these gates might have stayed locked forever.
Right then, I want you to look in the middle, behind that tree in the middle. Can you see a post sticking out of the ground that's white? That's a broken post. On the ground next to it, you'll see white bits of these posts and poles and things like that.
There's still a surprising amount left to see here, but the first two things pointed out are easy to miss if you don't know where to look. Almost swallowed by nature, the base of the old flagpole peeps out here from the ground opposite the station commander's quarters. In its day, we're told that the flag was raised here every morning at 8 a.m. and lowered again at 6 p.m. sharp. It was never left flying overnight because that was considered bad luck. We are told that wherever the personnel were on site, at certain times of the day they would turn and face the direction of the flag. A small ritual, but one that carried enormous meaning here. The next thing is far less imposing, but just as treasured, the last surviving lamppost on the grounds. Mary has affectionately nicknamed it Eddie. Every other post was stolen for scrap years ago, but Eddie somehow escaped that fate. Permission has been given for him to be moved to the restored water tower, keeping at least one small piece of history safe. It's fascinating to see the American influence on this site too. Windows swapped for UPVC in certain areas to keep out the British winter, 2 pin plug sockets in unexpected corners, and bars welded over certain windows, because we're told that only the Americans did that. Nods to the Americans just keep appearing, and it's when you're inside the main hospital that you can see the bold coloured stripes still running along the corridor walls, once used to guide patients and staff and put in by the Americans. Blue, for example, led the way to surgery.
The stripes on the walls so that people could find their way around. The NAAFI, so I'm off to the NAAFI. Okay. And so in the 60s they started to give the Airmen's Club names, started giving it a name. That way, instead of saying off to the NAAFI, I'm off to the Wing Service. That's where it was called.
Near the married quarters was the community side of the site, the part that brought people together outside the wards. This is where you'd find the NAAFI, the social heartbeat of Nocton. One of its best known venues was the Winged Serpent Club, a bar and gathering place for weddings, parties and countless off-duty evenings. There was a jukebox for the latest tunes, a busy bar and a pool table where games played out under a low hum of chatter.
So you can see the entrance behind, but you can also see one of the married quarters, whereas now it's just all vegetation. You can see this side is the brick, and you can see all the windows used to be painted blue, metal windows. But then you've got the prefab side, which is a bit different. So made from asbestos sheets. That's why we've got the stickers on.
Wow.
So this was the entrance into the Winged Serpent Club. The room on our right was where the pool table was, snooker table.
Yeah.
It's a 12 foot by 6 foot, so a full size snooker table. See that black pipe with lots of pipes through
Yeah.
it? That's where the beer would come through to the taps.
Wow.
Small handled taps. So there was stools in front of the bar. This first section had tables and chairs. The middle section was the lounge. And the end section was where the bop was held. Now the bop is the disco.
Yeah.
Sometimes they had a live band, sometimes it was just the disco equipment.
Standing in this room today, it's easy to imagine the dances that would have taken place here, the music spilling out into the night, couples courting and exchanging shy glances across the room, friends gathered at the bar, the clink of glasses and the hum of laughter, men with pints in hand, ladies making their way to the dance floor, skirts swaying to the beat. Even though I was never here in those days, The space seems to hum with a nostalgia I can't quite put my finger on, as if the walls themselves have held on to the echoes of those nights long after the music faded.
So these stickers, some of them are squadron stickers. So the bat, see that one? I've had people go, oh, that was my dad's squadron. These are known as zaps. A zap is a game that the Royal Air Force play.
In the smaller bar area, the walls are still peppered with squadron stickers from a game known as zapping. Visiting teams would leave their mark after interstation matches and meetups. Not far from the Winged Serpent Club stands the squash court, 2 stories with stairs up to a viewing lounge. It once echoed with the thud of rallies. For years the trees have tried to hold it together, but even nature can't keep things standing, and it has partially collapsed now and is scheduled in for demolition in the next few weeks. We're told that we could perhaps be some of the last people to see it. Now, I get the impression that despite what was going on in the world outside, the walls of these buildings saw their fair share of fun and laughter, a reminder that even in turbulent times, people still found moments to come together. Close by here were 3 Nissen huts that were used as churches, one for Christians, one for other denominations, and one as a Sunday school. And the walls still carry artwork from those days.
But what we have discovered is some drawings on the wall. And this dates back to the Second World War. So I'll show you that in a second. I'll put on my coat. So over here, an insignia for for the army, I don't know, this is American. But you know what Americans are like? American GIs, 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
We have a lady in the movie. So I'll take away that beam, but you've got light to...
Yeah.
So if you notice the way she sat, that's what they painted on the fuselage of the planes. The Memphis Belle.
Yes, yeah.
We've stepped into where the operating theatres are, so it's all surgical end.
Although we've touched on it before, now let's step into the main hospital and one of its most striking features, the eerie central corridor. It runs for 1/4 of a mile, straight as an arrow, leading towards the operating theatre. For patients lying on stretchers, the view would have been mostly skylights overhead, a strange, sterile tunnel, the kind of place where the mind would wander as the wheels clattered beneath them. This is the same route Mary's husband once travelled for a simple tonsil operation. For others, it was the path to far more serious, life-changing surgery. Many who came here won't remember this part at all. The operation was the focus, and afterwards they'd eventually find themselves down on the wards to recover. We don't have time to see every ward on this tour, but we're shown enough to appreciate the contrast between the hospital's most recent wards and the original wartime ones. We start with the newer ones. These were designed to be warmer, so the ceilings were lowered, but that brought its own problem. In the days when smoking was allowed in hospitals, the smoke would cling to the ceiling tiles. Even now, you can still see the yellow stains where the nicotine settled. Does anybody remember a time when smoking was allowed in hospitals? Let us know in the comments what you think about that change. Now, each ward here followed a similar pattern, a dormitory-style Nightingale layout, with 18 beds in the main space and 2 more in a small side ward, bringing the total to 20. Although some visitors on Mary's tour remember it differently, they are certain there were 24 beds in these wards. First-hand accounts like this are vital and fascinating, especially when they contrast with the history books. They add layers we might never uncover otherwise. Now, every single day except Sundays, the floor would be mopped from end to end. The beds were pulled out from the walls and every inch cleaned. At meal times too, a long table was set up down the centre, encouraging patients to get out of their bed and eat together. And whilst we're on the subject of food, at one time fruit trees were planted in the grounds between the wards, ensuring that the patients had the very best fresh fruit. Some of those trees are still here today, a living reminder of the care that once shaped this place. It was a small but important part of recovery. Who thinks we should still be doing that today? Let me know in the comments. Now, superbugs, they certainly existed, but they weren't properly recognised for what they were at the time. But in a military hospital like this, everything was kept shipshape anyway, spotless, orderly and well maintained. It was something they were incredibly proud of, and it was incredibly important. Now, what's fascinating is that one room here, a side room, was kept empty for 18 months, just in case it was needed. By who, you might ask? Well, Prince Charles, because at the time he was doing his officer training at RAF Cranwell, and it was thought that if he required treatment, then this RAF Nocton Hospital, this is where he would have been brought. As it turned out, he never needed it, but still the room remained ready all the same. The cleaners went in, it was kept immaculate for him. Stepping outside then, we move to the original wartime wards. There's 8 in total, 4 on each side, laid out in perfect symmetry. And it was here that some of the most serious cases were treated during the war. Amputations were common, injuries were life-changing. One nurse who served here, she remembered how the young soldiers, boys of just 18 perhaps, they would cry out for their mothers. She was only 22 herself at the time, barely older than some of the men she was caring for. Now, despite its size and importance, Nocton was never bombed, thankfully. It did come close, however. Hitler had targeted the site, but on the night his bombers came, a thick blanket of fog rolled over the area, hiding it from view. Thank goodness for the great British weather. Seriously though, these were difficult times, and the nurses that worked here, they remember that when the air raid sirens sounded, they had no bunkers to run to. All they could do was turn out the lights, draw the curtains and pray.
Obviously that brown sign is an American sign, but the blue sign would be the original hospital sign. This was 1991.
I noticed that, yeah.
A lot of them are Lincoln bricks. Yeah. So there was Lincoln bricks were made at 2 brickyards. One at Waddington, the other one was Bracebridge Heath.
There are so many stories tied to this place, and if you book one of Mary's tours, you'll hear them firsthand. From the peak of wartime with its single-layered buildings made of Lincoln brick, to the personal tales of relationships formed here, and the many men and women who met their future spouses within these grounds. Now, though nature has claimed much of it back, The air is alive with the rustle of leaves and the soft flutter of bats, the haunting calls of owls echoing through the darkness. It's powerful, almost primal place, and perhaps that explains some of the noises heard. But not everything that bumps in the night can be explained away as bats. It begins as all the best ghost stories do, in the small hours. The corridors are hushed, the lights low, and somewhere in the distance a shadow stirs. For decades, RAF Nocton Hall Hospital has drawn the attention of the paranormal world, its haunted reputation stretching right back to the 1970s. Nurses on the night shift spoke in hushed voices about an apparition they feared, the Grey Lady. Thought to be a former matron, she was said to glide along the matron's corridor in the dead of night. Those who saw her described the same chilling image, a lone figure moving steadily towards them, her form growing clearer with every step, until she simply faded away. She was glimpsed not only face to face, but from the windows that overlooked the corridor from other parts of the hospital. Needless to say, her room was just off that very hallway. But the ghosts of Nocton aren't all bound to the wards. One visitor swore they saw a horseman in the grounds of the old hall, dressed in clothes from long before the hospital time, a flicker of its much older history. Others have reported spectral nurses and doctors standing whispering silently in the corridors. And then there's the psychiatric ward. In its day, it was a place of true torment, electric shock therapy, and the care of those whose minds had been scarred beyond repair. War doesn't bring thoughts of roses and flowers. It is here more than anywhere else that visitors report the most intense sensations, headaches that appear from nowhere, an oppressive weight in the air, the feeling of being watched. It's a place even our guide avoids when she can. Special paranormal events invite the brave to walk the matron's corridor in the darkness alone. Some manage it, others have to go in pairs. This is a place where life began and ended, where joy, pain, fear and hope all passed through the same doors, where soldiers fought not on the battlefield but here for their lives, and some say not all of them ever truly left. If you want to see it for yourself though, please don't climb the fences, don't risk the asbestos, the rotten floors, the hidden dangers. Book a tour, walk these corridors with someone who knows their every shadow, because Nocton Hall won't last forever, and once it's gone, it's gone.
That's how I remember it at the top. But the front was removed because there was asbestos. That was removed during the first asbestos clearance. Which is all collapsed, it's all asbestos on the ground now. This is why we screwed this onto the wall and somebody ripped it off. Airman's mess.
Right.
Tis a mess in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the dining hall for the airmen and women. They would come from their accommodation up there to eat here.
Right.
But for their nighttime entertainment was the Winged Serpent Club.
Oh.
Complete opposite end to where their accommodation was. They had time to sober up by the time they staggered back. So this is where the telephone exchange was, where the switchboard was in there. We're going to get off the road and we're going to walk through the Nissen huts back.
As I promised at the start, before we wrap up here, let me show you Mary's home, right here on the site. It is the old water tower, and she and her family are lovingly bringing it back to life brick by brick. A few months ago, a TV crew filmed the restoration for Discovery Plus, I believe, and it's already begun to turn heads. If you would like to see more, I have shared a link to Mary's Facebook page in the description below, along with some details on how to book one of her tours. And before you ask, no, this isn't sponsored. I'm not being paid to say this. It is simply the kind of experience worth sharing. A chance to walk the grounds with a guide who knows the site's history inside out and whose passion for preserving it is clear in every step of the journey.
So that is it. Thank you to everybody for joining me on this week's episode. A huge thank you to Mary who led the tour. She was absolutely fantastic, and I can highly recommend booking yourself on one of her tours if you get the opportunity. I will drop some links to her Facebook page in the comments below in case you did want to book. Anyway, so that's enough. If you've got any comments, have you ever been to RAF Nocton? Were you here? Have you stayed here at the actual hospital? I know some people who have been born here that will still be alive, so it'll be interesting to hear your stories too. Right then guys, I have done enough waffling today, so I will hopefully see you on next week's episode. Have an amazing week everyone. Take care, bye.